You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Hello, world, and welcome to Tales from Hollywoodland, a veritable feast of movies, television, Broadway, showbiz stories, and even a little bit of news and gossip. With Julian Schlossberg, Arthur E. Friedman, and Stephen J. Rubin. Today we are talking about silent movies and rock music. Wow! And now, here's Steve.
Hi, guys. I was very excited to hear about today's topic because being a film historian, I always worry that people are forgetting history, as they often do in every aspect of life. And the fact that Josh is actually getting people to watch silent movies because he's putting rock music soundtracks on them was one of the freshest concepts I'd ever heard of. And I haven't watched a lot of silent movies in my life, and the younger generations, I don't know if they watch them at all. So what you're doing, Josh, is really laudable.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I really honestly didn't imagine that what would come of this is people being excited to see the silent film part as much as they were the rock music that was connected to it. So people are coming out of the cinemas, and I've been so lucky and thrilled to be able to go to a lot of these screenings across the country. And they're like, that was my first time seeing Nosferatu. I didn't realize how, great silent films could be. And, so that's been really great. And it feels great that that's an added bonus of the idea,
Josh, how did you come up with the idea?
Well, I came up with the idea when I was, it was sort of towards the end of the pandemic. And I have a movie theater in Austin, Texas. It's a little drive-in movie theater. I've had it for 15 years. And so during the pandemic, we obviously did pretty well because people could sit in their cars and watch movies. But I noticed...
By the way, Josh, you said you have a little drive-in. I've never
Correct.
heard of such...
Yes.
A little... Aren't drive-ins as a form, aren't they supposed to be big so you can accommodate a bunch of...
Yes. So my genius idea to not make a lot of money was to create the world's first boutique drive-in. So my first location took 12 cars a night in an alleyway in East Austin.
Oh, God.
And now it is huge, and it takes 30 cars. But yeah, of course, most drive-ins are known for taking hundreds. But yeah, so I created a boutique drive-in cinema, and what's been cool about it is we never really showed new releases. We always showed classics. I went to film school, and so I was lucky enough to see all of these great silent films when I was in school. And, I was the weird kid at age 17 whose favorite film director was Werner Herzog, that guy. And so, yeah, I started this cinema, and I showed movies from, pretty much the 40s, 30s, 40s to 70s, 80s. And
Josh, I'm curious, in your film school class, when they showed silent movies, what was the general reaction from today's youth watching silent movies?
Well, there were two types of people in the class. There were the types that knew that these were, we were on hollow ground watching these things. And then there were the others, myself included, I have to say, were in the others, which was like not that thrilled that it was silent movie day. I wanted to be watching Werner Herzog and, I liked the noir weeks, It really was later on that I discovered how incredible these silent movies were. And it was actually because going full circle to the original question, during the pandemic, I had my little drive-in and it was doing okay, but my peers, their cinemas were not doing very well because people couldn't go to them. And also, when people could start going back, there was no content for them to show. There wasn't anything intriguing to get people into the cinemas, to go back to independent cinemas, and they were struggling. And so it was around that time that I started thinking, as a thought experiment, what kind of content could we as independent cinema owners create ourselves that might be intriguing enough to bring people out of their couches to go experience something in a cinema? And that wasn't, a new Hollywood release. That was like a new tier, something to add to all of that. And I think in my head, I was sort of thinking some sort of hybrid of, a Mystery Science Theater 3000 idea, something with found footage. So I started watching a lot of old silent movies that I knew were in the public domain. And the first thing that hit me was the same thing that hit me when I was in film school, which is I'm not enjoying this mostly because the music that's being played with it is pulling me out of it because it's so dated. It's this dated music that does not speak to me. So as I'm watching this footage, I put on my headphones and I go to iTunes and I put on Josh's playlist, which, of course, since I'm Gen X, was all alternative rock music. And as I'm watching these silent movies and listening, I immediately have a completely different feeling to these silent movies. Like, I'm engaged in the characters. I'm feeling the tension in the scenes. I'm laughing out loud. And it was because the music was modernizing the experience for me and giving me something to relate to. And it changed the dynamic, not just of the movie, but also of the music. This is music that I've been listening to for 25, 30 years, but the music was more exciting again, too, because the story that I was watching was enhancing the music experience. And so I sat back and I was like, maybe this is that content that I'm looking for that I could create and give to independent cinemas. And so that's where the nexus of the idea came from.
Well, it's a great idea, and I think we all are really excited for you. Now, I spent a lot of my time trying to clear music rights. Now, you've got Radiohead, you've got REM, you've got some of the biggest names in alternative rock. How the hell did you do it? Because I know how difficult it is to get a Sinatra song or a Dean Martin song, and they're not exactly this current.
I know. Obviously, the only way that this ever was able to happen was because I pulled that magic trick off.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, now that I'm sort of sitting back and thinking about it, that was the key to the kingdom that opened the door to making this happen. And when I've thought about it, what I think the reason is that this all worked out was two things. One, I went to the bands first, and the bands saw an idea that no one had come to them with before. And it was an interesting idea, and it was it was an artistic idea. It was a new art, a new way of using two arts to create a new art. So I think that the band support was huge. And that's what opened the door to the labels trying to figure out how to fit this rectangle into the square box. And I think that part of what made that work was it wasn't just me going and being like, hey, I want this music for me, 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 me. It was me going to the bands and the labels and saying, hey, I want this music to create this art to give to struggling independent cinemas across the country. So my pitch was not just, hey, I want this for my movie theater. My pitch was, I want this for my friends' movie theaters, And
you also had a great F.W. Murnau, maybe a few of them knew that, but many of them must have known Buster Keaton.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
also
yeah.
have.
Well, and again, it was that idea of like putting Radiohead with the dark, brooding, moody, dramatic Nosferatu made sense and worked for the themes of the movie, but also the themes of the band. So pairing REM with Buster Keaton, and They Might Be Giants with Buster Keaton, the bands were like, totally, if we were a movie, we would, they related to the pairings,
Yeah.
So that's, yeah, it's been really, and since many of you have written books, I come from that as well. I've written some books that have to do with the music industry, that have to do with Hollywood. So all those years of being the detective and finding people that I want to talk to or that I want to interview, like that helped. If I didn't have those skills, those writer skills, I couldn't have pulled this off because I wouldn't have known where to start, but because when you write a book, you're like, well, I want to get to this person. You have to figure that out,
That's true.
I'm curious about something. It's a little tangential, but there's often talk in the circles about Pink Floyd and the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Now, I know the Pink Floyd album Dark Side of the Moon has some kind of reference here. What is the whole story about Pink Floyd and this soundtrack?
So, back in, I will not say the year because I don't want to get it wrong. But I'm guessing it was sometime in the 70s. That feels right to me. There were some guys somewhere that had smoked a lot of pot or something and basically figured out that playing Dark Side of the Moon alongside the Wizard of Oz, that it worked, okay? And that certain moments hit and certain themes in the music, hit, and that became this sort of mythical thing. And so cinemas would secretly, promote that they're playing the Wizard of Oz but at midnight, and then people would go knowing what they were going to get, and they were going to get Dark Side of the Moon, as the soundtrack. And, there definitely was inspiration from that, from not just from the whole idea of pairing the music and the movie, but from that experiential thing of this sort of like, hey, did you hear that they're doing this and this? Let's go, and, you get up and you go out at midnight to the movie theater and you're experiencing something that shouldn't be, and that's part of the fun,
Julian, you recall that Phil Borak produced Pink Floyd?
I do. I remember.
Sure. Arthur and Julian, since you both owned movie theaters, did you guys ever have a midnight show?
All the time.
Well, I think I'd have to look and be sure, but I think I started them with Night of the Living Dead at the Waverly Theater. I put that in the 70s, and I think I was the first person to do it. So,
what about you, Arthur? Arthur, what about you?
We had the Harvard Square Theater in Cambridge. We had midnight shows every Friday, Saturday night.
What'd you show?
We had, Rocky Horror Picture Show, of course, and we used Talking Heads. I forget the name of the title of the movie.
Stop Making Sense.
Stop Making Sense.
Yeah.
I booked that. A guy calls me up. So I want to play Stop Making Sense in your theater. I did not hear. I never heard of the Talking Heads. My daughter at the time was like 11 years old. I called her at home. She was doing her homework. Jenny, tell me about Stop Making Sense. She said, book it. Just put it right in there. And we did, and it played forever, So, midnight shows, you need to have the right audience, obviously.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Of course. Anybody who can be.
It seems to me, Josh, your what you're talking about here is perfect for if I still own the Harvard Square, I'd play that.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Well, I'm hoping that current cinemas will pick up on what I'm laying down, because
you've got a damn good chance to have it. I'm wondering if you're aware of who F.W. Murnau wanted originally to play Count Orlok. Do you know who
I do not. Do you?
Well, you'll be fascinated to know it was Conrad Veidt, who we also know as Major Strasser in Casablanca.
No way. No way.
Conrad Veidt was a very big German actor before he came to America. He came to America because he had married a Jewish wife. His wife was Jewish, and they got out of Germany. The last movie he ever did that he was alive to see was Casablanca. So, kind of interesting that he did that. Murnau died at 42 years old in a car accident. So, and the company that released it, Arthur and Steve and Josh, was called Planner Films. They spent a fortune advertising it, and they went busted. They went bust because what had happened was they had stolen Hans Stoker's Dracula. He had actually he changed the name to Count Orlok, but it was basically stealing that. And Mrs. Sproka went to court and made the court said, destroy all prints. It's over.
I know. Yeah.
But you got a print, and I saw the quality. It's beautiful. It's pristine. How did you find one?
Well, first of all, that I am so honored that you think so, because you will probably be surprised to know that this was a very bad copy originally, because I had to get a public domain copy. I couldn't, as opposed to using one of the restored ones, which would be owned by somebody else, So I couldn't use the restored one for this one, because this was the first one that I was doing, and the whole project was self-funded. So everything went into paying for the music rights. Yeah. So I couldn't, also get a top print. So what I did was I found one of the crappy ones, and I taught myself restoration software, and I did it myself.
Whoa! Well, congratulations!
Wow, frame by frame.
Oh boy.
I did it scene by scene. I did not go frame by frame, but scene by scene, I dialed in. I got the blurriness out, and I worked with what I had to work with. So this version is.
But you did it because you've made it. You see Murnau's shadows. Those shadows are clear and beautiful.
And that means so much to me.
Yeah, and atmospheric. I mean, you really know what, because it wasn't a scary movie. It never really was. It was more to kind of haunt you, this kind of thing.
Yeah.
It was
Julian, I'm curious, was there ever a silent movie made in color?
They were tinted. They tinted the movies. A fellow named Paul Killiam bought the D.W. Griffith estate, and he had the negatives. And he had a big kind of enemy named Raymond Rohauer. And these guys were fighting each other for these movies, and they had them all somehow. Thief of Baghdad, and that's an incredible movie. They still don't know how the Fairbanks movie, the original, how they did some of the special effects on that. So you've got Josh, you've got an incredible treasure, the trove of film, and if you can keep it up, I think you're going to have an incredible ability to get great movies, because Griffith alone.
Well, there's so many. That's what's so great,
That's right. And
Josh, do you live in Austin?
I do. I live in Austin, Texas.
What a great town. What a great town.
It is a good town. I was born here. I left for a while, went to college in New York, but I came back actually in 97. I've been back since 97. So.
Well, you did an interesting thing. You did an interesting thing with the titles, because in those days people took a long time to read them. It was really amazing. So you were able to shorten that because people can read much quicker than they did in those days.
Well, and also that was sort of part of my trick in how I got all of the songs to like work as well as they do. Like depending on how short or long I cut a dialogue, I could make a moment in the next scene hit at a certain place that, with the most effective, like crescendo.
So you're actually moving title cards around from the original?
So I don't touch the movie itself, but I will lengthen or shorten title cards.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so just the title cards. And that helped both with the, they were very long. And that was one of the things that I think back when I saw these movies in film school took me out of it, is that the momentum stops. The second you see the title card, the momentum, and then you're back in the movie. So some of these title cards were like 25, 30 seconds long, So once you pull them back, you get this new momentum to the movie. And I think that's part of what, without people realizing, because they've never seen it before, they never saw previous versions of it. I think that's part of the reason that people are responding so enthusiastically about seeing these, because the engine keeps going in a way that, because of that slight change.
So Josh, I'm a little curious about the technical aspect. You're actually going into the film itself and shortening the title cards. What kind of program allows you to do that?
Oh, I'm just using, Final Cut. I use Final Cut to do all my editing.
When you shorten a title card, are you also taking picture out?
You mean the movie picture?
Yeah, because obviously the title card sits in front of the picture. So when you shorten the title card, are you removing the picture behind it, or is it I'm just curious?
There's not pictures behind it, Steve.
There's no picture behind the title cards.
No.
So that doesn't shorten the movie. In fact, I made a point of looking at, there's like 5 different versions of Nosferatu out there. There's an hour and 40-minute version. That's the
restored.
The restored one. There's an hour and 30 minutes. There's an hour and 20 minutes. So when I settled on the one that was an hour and 30 minutes, I made a point of keeping the movie at an hour and 30 minutes, the movie part, the part that was the movie itself, So, yeah.
Well, also, I think Universal's bringing that out, too. Not your version, of course, but I think...
No, Eggers,
right.
Nosferatu. Yeah,
Exactly.
That was just by chance.
But that's going to, I believe, help you, not hurt you. I think it'll help you.
I would like to think so. Yeah, it just so happened that I was ready to release the first one at that moment, and that the first one was a good Halloween movie.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, speaking of Halloween movies, have you thought about doing something with Metropolis?
Yes, in fact, I've kind of got like a very painful story that connects to Metropolis. The first one I ever did was Metropolis, actually, and it was with a band called 9 Inch Nails, and it was their double album called The Fragile, and it worked perfectly. Like I didn't think I would ever get a movie and soundtrack to work as perfectly as that. I was very relieved when the Nosferatu Radiohead one turned out the way it did, but the first one I ever did was with Metropolis, and it was gorgeous, and it was so great. The problem was, and again, this was the big learning curve of starting Silent Sinks. I had no idea that, you know, every studio, every label that I went to would be, you know, ready and willing to help me, except one. And it's not necessarily that they weren't ready and willing to help me. It just so happened that Universal Music has a very specific way that they license their music. And they were the only one where I brought the rectangle and the square box and said, I need this to fit into there, where they said, well, that's not going to fit.
Well,
we
amazing.
Can't make that fit.
It's still amazing to me that you did what you did, having dealt with them. Now, in February, if I'm correct, you're coming out with Sherlock Jr.,
the second one,
Keaton,
yes.
Who starred in it and directed it and produced it. And it was interesting on that movie because it was very similar in this one aspect of Woody Allen's Purple Rose of Cairo, because in Junior, in Sherlock Jr., he goes into the movie that he's projecting, and of course in Woody's, Jeff Daniels comes out of the movie.
Yes, that's right.
It's a brilliant movie, and even though it's only about 45 minutes, it's one of the great silent comedies.
So a couple of the movies that I picked are, you know, as you just mentioned, under an hour. So what I'm doing is I'm adding a short to go before it, a silent sync short. And so I'm still deciding what the short will be that goes with the REM Sherlock Jr., but it's either going to be a short Chaplin or a different short Buster Keaton, and that short will have its own modern music soundtrack from, like, I'm calling it the opening act, you know, like it's a rock concert. There's the opening act, and then there's the headliner. So the headliner for the next one is REM with Sherlock Jr.
Are there a number of silent films that are in the public domain for you to draw on?
Oh my
God, yes. So there's more than I could ever, you know, get through. I'm trying. What I'm trying to do, though, is I'm trying to pick some of the less obvious ones, you know, and not just go through, you know, Caligari, Metropolis, you know, the ones that everyone knows about. I'm trying to, and I found a couple of incredible ones that I had never heard of and would never have come across if I wasn't digging, you know, that I'm going to do for future ones.
Well, one I would recommend is Griffith's Way Down East, with some of the greatest shooting you've ever seen with ice flows, and poor Lillian Gish is jumping in cold, freezing water from one ice flow to another ice flow. It's a great movie, and I have
to watch that one.
Not as well known as Orphans of the Storm and Intolerance and Birth of a Nation, but that one, Way Down East, is something to look into. You know, the Keaton movie was originally called The Misfit. The Sherlock Jr. was originally called The Misfit. And when he shot it, he was directing it. It turned out that his friend, Fatty Arbuckle, had been on trial, lost his career, and was in debt for $750,000. Now, in the 1920s, I don't know how to tell you, $750,000 is probably, I don't know, $30 million now. And he gave him a job. He was going to be this co-director on that movie. And then Fatty, I guess, being as angry as he was, started yelling at people, started yelling at Keaton. Keaton had to get rid of him, but he got him another job. So that was interesting that Keaton tried to help his friend, because Fatty had actually discovered Keaton. So it was kind of payback time.
Is any of Chaplin in public domain, Josh?
So his early shorts are, which is why I'm doing some stuff with his shorts to go along with some of the shorter features. His later works are not in the public domain, and because because he composed so much of the music for his major works, those are married to the movies, so you cannot separate them.
So his estate owns those films?
Yeah, the estate still owns the majority of Chaplin's features. Yeah.
So
Josh, were they doing it in the silent days? Were they doing any soft porn? As feature.
Yeah. I mean, not in regular cinemas, but there was a whole industry of that started in the early 1900s.
Where would they exhibit?
Usually in brothels or in like in sort of secret, like meetup
but
places.
Not theatrical.
Arthur, smoke-filled political rooms.
Yes.
Intolerance, Griffith's Intolerance has a whole area called the Babylon section where there is a lot of nudity and there's a lot of sexual encounters, as we would call them.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So it did happen even with the big boys, but he had a reason. Yeah. I mean, it was Babylon. It wasn't a church setting.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, going back to school, when you would see a silent movie in class, did the silent movie come with a soundtrack, a musical soundtrack? So because I know when silent movies were originally released, there was literally a guy in the theater playing piano. Yeah. So obviously there's no piano player in your classroom. So these come with pre-recorded soundtracks created for the movies?
And it was usually either like an organ or it could sometimes be a full orchestra, but it was always of the classical nature,
Right.
And that's the rub, like with these great silent movies, is that they're locked in to the imagery might be timeless because the stories, the narratives are things that we can relate to, but the music is usually, just completely locked into a different time. And, like for a purist, great, if that's your thing, but most average Joes, that's not going to be their thing.
No.
And if we want more people to see this stuff, well, this is one way to get it in front of people in a different way.
Have any of your band guys, have they seen the film? Have they seen them?
From what I understand, they've all at least, checked them out. I don't know if they've watched the whole thing, but they've checked them out to the point where they told their managers, help this guy out,
Good. That's great. Now, Are you on a schedule for every 4 months to try to release a new film, or that's technically tough schedule you're doing?
Technically, yes. I think I'm going to be able to do it at least for the first 3. Maybe after the third one, it'll be more like 6 months. But I've got a schedule for REM in February. And then the third one I'm hoping to do is They Might Be Giants with Keaton's The Cameraman. And, the theme for those two is obviously filmmaking. And I love that. I love that the narratives have, this love of film within the movie itself.
Yes, that's true.
Do you own other theaters, Josh?
I just have the Blue Starlight here in Austin, which is more than enough.
Well, I'm curious on an average night, the first 30 cars get in, how much backup do you have? And what do you tell those people?
Well, for better or worse, I don't get backup. Basically, a slow night, I'll get 15 or 20 cars, and a busy night, I'll sell out. And the thing is that we've always been about buying in advance through our website. So once we sell out, people know that we're sold out, and, they don't come and,
Well, to create these wonderful programs, I'm sure there's significant money involved. Nobody works for free. Do you have investors who have helped you out?
Still waiting on those to show up. I was like, you know what? I'll scrounge up what I need to do this first one, and at some point, someone's going to come along and be like, "You've got it, kid. Here." So I'm waiting on that. That'll happen. But
what do you use, Josh? What do you use for speakers?
Oh, at the drive-in?
Yeah.
FM. People tune in with their radio.
So it's within the car.
So
Yeah.
Arthur and Julian are always talking about their theater experiences and how important the popcorn business is, of course.
Yes.
In the drive-in business, are you still making a good chunk of change from your refreshments?
Yes, but I have a very different business model where most drive-ins, they charge like $10 a car, and then they hope people buy concessions. I don't do that. I charge a premium for people to come to my cinema experience. And if they want to buy popcorn, they can, but they don't have to. So
how much do you charge, Josh?
So a car slot for 2 people is $35. A car slot for 4 people is, I want to say, $55. And so, it's like a set price that is about the experience that I've created. You kind of have to see it to understand. It's not just like a regular drive-in where there's a screen and that's it. Like, I hand built all my screens, and they're all built on vintage trailers. So it's kind of like part of the show is coming to the show.
And how many screens
do you have the same location, or do you keep moving?
Yeah. I have the same location for usually 4 to 5 years at a time, and then someone buys the land for condos and I have to find a new location. But because all of my screens are on trailers, I just can move them, which again was part of the business model. And to answer the other question, I have 4 screens. One screen takes 30 cars, one screen takes 20 cars, one screen takes 10 cars, and one screen takes 4 cars.
Oh, God. God bless you.
I thought you were going to say that one screen is in your home and you bring in 3 people.
Right.
Josh, you're saying that if a person comes in, pays their $35 or $50, the concession's built in. Is that what happens?
Yes. So on tickets for like over 4 people, there's built-in concessions.
Popcorn, go straight popcorn, candy?
Popcorn and candy and a drink, yeah.
And do you have like girls on roller skates delivering them to the car?
Back in the early days of the drive-in, we actually did do that.
No.
When it was, yeah. I had a couple of employees that were super into it, and they would put on their roller skates. They would do that. That was a lot of fun. That's not really something you can keep up, but
I think that CBS Sunday Morning should find you, or you should find a way to have them find you.
Yeah.
Because you're a natural topic for what they do. A great program.
Yeah. I'm interested in knowing, besides the silent film, what are the films that have done the best for you in the past in Austin? Because you've got a college town, you've got the capital of Texas, and you've got a pretty hip audience, I would think.
I can tell you that if the only movies I played each week were The Notebook and Goonies, I would stay in business.
Notebook and Goonies.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. If I just kept playing those year round, people would come every week. Because again, part of it is it's like a wine pairing, it's like the wine and the cheese. Like there's the experience and then there's the movie. And so part of what people choose to come to is they want to come to a comfort movie. They want to come to a movie that is beloved to them, and they want, but they also don't want to have to follow the movie the whole time. They want to be able to hang out, So it's, there's movies that are familiar to people actually do better because they want to be able to hang out with their friends and visit and, just kind of chill out.
Are you using DVDs?
We use Blu-rays for most of our classics. We do have a DCP system though, and depending on the movie, if there's a movie that really fits, we'll show a new release.
But you're not in digital, no? Yes. Are you using digital?
Yeah.
At this stage?
Yeah, DCP.
Equipped for digital, really?
DCP is digital.
Yeah.
So Halloween is coming up. What is your Halloween title this year?
Well, again, it's the same Halloween movies every year because they're the ones that people want. It's The Craft, it's Beetlejuice, it's Hocus Pocus, it's John Carpenter's Halloween.
There you go.
Yeah,
that's fabulous. So when you're not running,
I gotta say this.
Okay, go ahead, Arthur.
Josh.
Yes.
On a personal note. And don't misunderstand this because I mean this sincerely in a very nice way. Julian and I had relationships for a long time with Harvey Weinstein when he was younger. When he was younger, not the guy who became Me Too and all that stuff. But we knew Harvey pretty good. There's a similarity. There's a resemblance. And I'm saying that in a nice way.
Sure.
Harvey was a great personality, a huge, personality. And long before all this stuff ever happened. But Julian, do you notice the resemblance?
I see what you mean, but I don't think Harvey ever had a hat.
No, he just had a lot of boxer shorts that fell out of his pants as he was talking all the time.
So, Josh, when you're not running the theater, it sounds like you're there a lot. You're running it 7 days a week. Do you get a break?
We mainly run on weekends, Thursday through Saturday.
Okay.
So during the week, I'm mostly with my kids and taking them to school and taking them to after school. And then I do the drive-in on weekends. And then at night, when I'm done with everything, I work on my silent syncs.
So I'm curious, what do your kids think of the drive-in experience?
Gosh, they love it. I mean, they love coming to the drive-in and helping me run the concession stand. My son can run the concession stand without any help now. He's 9 and he loves it. He loves, making minimum wage, on nights that he runs the concession stand and, it's great. I mean, it's really the most fulfilling aspect of still having that business is that my children get to interact with it and it means something to them.
LA used to be just a lot of drive-ins until the property values rose and the drive-ins went hasta la bye-bye. But I still remember going to the drive-in and at the front, and of course these were the bigger ones, the bigger drive-ins. There was a swing set right in front of the screen. So between movies, you'd go swing. Yeah. I still remember that. Do you have a swing set?
I've always wanted a swing set, but we have not had a swing set.
Well, maybe someday you'll get one.
Someday there will be a swing set.
I'm interested in knowing that during COVID, especially initially, you were probably the only theater in all of Austin, Texas open.
We were the only theater open in Central Texas for like 6 months.
Whoa, that must have been the best time financially of your career.
It was, and if I had quit while I was ahead, I could have retired.
If that COVID had only gone on.
Now, drive-in theaters have often been referred to as passion pits.
Yes.
Now, people who attend your drive-ins, are there any rules they have to deal with? Are there certain things that are not allowed?
Before the movie, there's a disclaimer that comes up on the screen, and it says, "Feel free to make out in your car, but the management insists that you keep your clothes on at all times."
No fancy positions.
Yeah.
But in a car, you have to. Josh, on behalf of all of us, what are your favorite movies of all time?
Well, my all-time favorite movie has been called the Gone with the Wind of France, and it is called Children of Paradise.
Oh yes, Les Enfants du Paradis, brilliant movie. Brilliant.
That is my all-time favorite movie. Yeah. And it makes sense because I grew up on Marx Brothers movies and loving, that kind of comedy. And so to find a movie that's basically Gone with the Wind and Casablanca, but with a mime, and it has all those elements. So, yeah.
Who's the filmmaker?
Arletty? Was it Arletty?
Wait. I'm drawing a blank, but Arletty was the woman. She was.
That's what happens when you get to my age. The wires get crossed. I knew Arletty was involved with it.
She was the
femme
female
fatale.
lead, the femme fatale. She was great. But I want to say Jacques Prévert was the.
Well, Steve will look it up.
It's called Children of Paris.
Children of Paradise.
Paradise.
Well, Josh, if you take the more commercial titles, films we're all familiar with, the Casablancas, Citizen Kane, etc. What are your subjective favorite movies?
Excuse me just for a second. Excuse me, Marcel Carné.
Carné. Yeah, Carné.
We got to go back.
Sorry, Arthur, go ahead.
We have to be left back, you and I, Josh. I don't know how you could forget that.
Carné, yeah. I actually feel bad. Because,
Me too.
Arthur, go ahead. Arthur, what was your question?
The question is, what are Josh's favorite? You ask me, I can give you my top 10 off the top of my head. What are yours?
I don't know if I could. Well, so let me say that many of them are Woody Allen movies. And so they're some of my all-time favorites are some of Woody's, early works,
Not Midnight in Paris?
I loved Midnight in Paris. That's actually definitely one of my favorites. But
you're talking Take the Money and Run and Bananas and those.
Yeah. But Bullets Over Broadway was one of my tops for sure. But then if you get into my generation, Back to the Future, The Goonies, all the Indiana Jones movies. That was really like, as far as like the comfort movies of my youth. If you're not talking high art, that's why those are the movies that I show the most at the drive-in.
Well, we've been talking about Buster Keaton. We've been talking about Woody Allen. You talked about the Marx Brothers. My question, which I ask almost every week now, is whatever happened to movie comedies? I look in the listings,
right,
and they're gone. And what's your theory that movie comedy is gone?
Well, they've all gone to streaming, and that's the thing. Those are not considered tentpole movies anymore, so they get hidden in the streaming outlet malls, and but yeah, it's tragic, isn't it? That and it's part of the reason I don't watch a lot of movies anymore, honestly, because like usually I'm not in the mood for the kind of brooding cinema that is coming out these days, and I do long for something that's just fun,
Thank you. The magic word, fun. Listen, I light a candle anytime anybody can get any movie made because I know how difficult it is. But come on, guys, enough brooding. I used to go to the cinema like yourself to see fun.
Yeah.
Abbott and Costello, Laurel and Hardy, the Marx Brothers. I mean, I didn't go back to the 30s. I saw them on TV. It's funny. The first time I saw Marx Brothers was at the Universal Amphitheater, which isn't even there anymore. They got rid of it, but they had a Marx Brothers festival. And how could you not be overwhelmed by the comedy? We need more comedy, right, guys?
I know. I agree.
There's no question, and especially in these times when it's not too funny out there.
No, it's not too funny out there.
No, but I am interested in. I like this idea that you have what I guess we could say a Chinese restaurant menu. You've got column A, column B, column C, and column D, all four. That's really quite. That's.
I also think I think your Silent Sync series is also going to play at great midnight shows because, now I'm speaking for myself. I start to flag about 10:30, but when you're watching a silent movie at 1:00 in the morning or 12:30 at night, and you got a pounding rock soundtrack, baby, you're awake.
Yeah. For me, though, unfortunately, it's just a matter of enough that there has to be a cinema out there that gets it and puts it on at that hour. Right now, everyone's slotting it in because it's a Halloween movie, but it was never meant to be a Halloween movie at all. It just was, if it had been ready in March, it would have come out in March.
But in a way, it helps you, Josh. In a way, it gets you the bookings because we're not too swift in programming.
No, it's true. No, it's true. But I do hope that at least one cinema out there, tries it out as a midnight movie, an ongoing thing.
Zone in on San Francisco. Zone in on San Francisco. There's a place there for you. I can guarantee.
Yeah.
It also. I've spent a fair amount of time in my life at the MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art in New York, and they've shown a lot of silent film. And I think you might be interested in something like this, so you might give them a try. Because
I will do that.
It's actually where I met Lillian Gish, which of course sent me home with a real great feeling that I had met one of the great all-time movie stars, Miss Gish. Who couldn't have been nicer. But yes, there are going to be places, hopefully, that will play this movie. Now, you played it in Austin. How did you do? Was your first? I gather you must have played it at your drive-in.
Yeah, no, I'm going to show it ongoing at my drive-in. It's gotten we've gotten an audience for it. It's been great. But really what's been most thrilling is going to other people's cinemas around the country and seeing it sold out, like at the American Cinematheque in LA, like for 5 nights it was sold out. And I went to every one of those shows and it was just thrilling. And, I got to go to New York and DC and New Orleans and see shows it playing in all these different amazing theaters. So, I mean, it's been incredible. It's got over 200 cinemas in over 35 states that booked it, which I cannot be more thrilled about. So I'm just happy to be here, as they say.
How has the
do you have a template of ways to promote the film for the various exhibitors?
Yeah. Well, we've got a good distributor, that did most of the work, honestly, in getting it into cinemas. Cinelife, great distributor, and I paid an arm and a leg for my PR guy, who did a great job getting me not only in Rolling Stone but on this show.
Yeah.
Hey.
How has the critical reaction been? Are the critics reviewing your shows? Are you getting criticism?
So I haven't gotten reviews most movies get, but I've gotten reviews from movie critics on social media where they'll tweet that they saw it and they've all been positive. And I guess the one sort of official review I got was from Slash Film, the online film scene magazine. And they did a beautiful review and spoke very highly of it. So I'm very proud of the fact that the industry seems to think it's a hit,
Josh, you mentioned that you've been able to adjust the title links and get into the, to make the pictures, customize them. Who does your sound mixing? I would assume that obviously you've got to have a terrific mix to include the rock music. Who does that for you?
Well, so it's the great thing about the world we live in is everybody has the best quality recording through, on their phones, So my job was to not fuck that up. It was, was to not make it worse. It was to keep it as good as it was. And so luckily, part of the process in finalizing these is the picture and sound go to where they turn it into the DCP that then goes out to theaters, and they monitored that the sound quality equaled where it started. So I luckily didn't have to have any part in that, as long as my one job was not to screw it up.
So when you run the movies in your theater, in terms of the volume level, is there a certain...
That's funny. It's funny. It's funny you say that, because on the first premiere screening in LA, I realized how important the projectionist was for this in particular, because the projectionist needs to check that the volume can be felt. Because if you don't feel the sound, it's not loud enough for this, And what we actually did was, after that first night, I went back to my distributor and I said, you need to put a note on every DCP that gets sent out that the projectionist needs to make sure the volume is above what they normally put their movie sound volume at. Because when they do it just at regular volume, they're thinking of the dialogue sound. They're not thinking of the music sound. They focus on the dialogue, and the music sound needs to be higher for this. So I made a point of making sure that that we put the word out that if you have your volume at a 6 in your theater, do a 7. If you have your volume at a 7 in your theater, do an 8.
Reminds me when Columbia released Heavy Metal, the movie, and they would have these animated sequences which were very evocative, and then they'd break into that rock music soundtrack, and it would just blow the theater speakers. It was just like you're saying. You got to feel that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You contemplating a streaming deal, Josh?
Well, I mean, I would love that at some point someday, because then more people will get to experience it. But basically, the rights I have right now are strictly, for the theatrical. So again, if someone came along, like a streaming service, and was like, hey, we want this, and there was, someone else's money involved, maybe that could happen someday.
Now, up till now, you've been working with established bands, obviously fairly high-profile bands. Have you thought of going to musicians to create custom soundtracks for one of the PD titles?
Well, part of the reason I think that I'm able to do this is because, as Kinky Friedman once said, I want a job that doesn't require my attendance. And I think that's one of the appealing things about this, is I'm going to these bands and I'm like, you don't have to do anything. You just have to say yes.
So it's also they're very big, huge rock groups.
Yes,
You want to use their names because that's the attraction for a younger audience.
Yes. Well, that's what brings people in to see a silent movie. If that's what's going to bring people in to see a silent movie, then great.
That's right.
Well, this has been terrific, Josh. And
thank you so much.
Speaking for all of us, we wish you so much good luck with this. You've got a great product, and I think all the actors and filmmakers who are no longer with us, who created silent movies, are probably thinking nice things about you right now, about preserving for a new generation. We're going to turn this over to our producer announcer, Mike Faber, because we're going to wrap this up. But you've been a terrific guest.
Thank you guys so much. It's been an honor to be on this with y'all.
Wish you luck, Josh. Really.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
You've reached the end of this episode of Tales from Hollywoodland. Always remember, we couldn't do this without you. We want to hear from you, so please write us anytime at talesfromhollywoodland@gmail.com. Remember, you could also find us wherever fine podcasts are found. And now you could even find us up on YouTube. If you made it this far into this episode, why not subscribe and give us a thumbs up? The link's right below, folks, so you could just click right there. Or if you're listening to the podcast, 5 stars and subscribe. It's always a great thing to do. We're also up on social media if you're into that kind of thing. Check us out on Instagram or Facebook. Before we get out of here, let's see what the guys are doing on their shows. Julian, what do we have on your show?
Well, Juliet Taylor, one of the great casting directors of all times in motion pictures, has done over 100 movies that she's cast, including Sleepless in Seattle and Big and Schindler's List and Mississippi Burning and 43 Woody Allen movies, including Midnight in Paris. So she's quite a force in casting, and I'm very happy to have her.
That is awesome. Steve, what do we got cooking over on Saturday night at the movies?
John Burlingame, the author, music historian, film music historian, television music historian. We talk about the great TV themes, and it's the first podcast I actually get to insert the themes themselves. So I have a wonderful podcast featuring those kind of catchy finger-snapping themes like The Addams Family, Beverly Hillbillies, Gilligan's Island, Mission Impossible. So it's a lot of fun.
Let's hear you whistle the Andy Griffith theme. That's what I want to try. Here. Okay. That's awesome. On behalf of Steve, Arthur, and Julian, thanks again for listening. This is your producer and announcer, Mike Faber. We'll see you here next time on Tales from Hollywoodland. Your Hollywood adventure starts right here.
Craving a caffeine fix and a dose of adventure?
Join us for the Have Coffee Will Travel podcast, where we sip, savor, and explore the world one cup at a time.
From discussing the latest coffee trends to diving into pop culture obsessions and sharing travel tips, we've got you covered.
So grab your favorite mug, hit play, and let's embark on a journey together.
Brewing up conversations about coffee, culture, and curiosity.
The Have Coffee Will Travel podcast.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.